Yo, dudes, the Empire's pretty chill. Maybe you could, like, join it or something.
Lucamus Prime here, so welcome to the next episode of Movie Didn't Need a Sequel. And today, guys, I'm going to be covering another Sony animated pictures film today in this series. Now I've already covered some examples before, guys, and this is another example, in my opinion, of a film that, in my opinion, should have only worked as one movie alone, and they did not need sequels. So I wish this film was just a standalone film. And this film is one of my favourites by Sony of all time, guys. A film that I really love, and I wish it stayed on its own, and that's, of course, none other than 2009's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. So, yeah, now, I love this movie. I really do. I think it's probably my third favourite Sony film, which is animated behind Spider-Verse and Mitchell vs. the Machines. Yeah, I love this movie. This is just an absolutely brilliant movie, guys, and, you know, in some of what I think of it, so, you know, I think it's got an amazing story, an amazing concept of food falling from the sky. That's just awesome, and animation is also amazing, and there's great performances from people like, you know, Bill Hader, Anna Faris, Mr. T, and Bruce Campbell, among many others, including as well James Caan, may he rest in peace, as well, and Andy Samberg, Benjamin Bratt, Neil Patrick Harris, and many others. And it's just as a brilliant story, in my opinion, guys, and it's really fun to watch, in my opinion, and directed, of course, by the great Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. And they're definitely great directors, guys, who have gone on to make other films such as the Jump Street films and also the Lego Movie and of course, Spider-Verse. So, yeah, their work's definitely amazing. This movie is definitely no exception, because I love this movie. So, yeah, this is definitely a really amazing film, guys. And this movie also had a pretty amazing ending as well, in my opinion. A really great ending where, you know, at the end of this movie, there's like this device called the FODSMDFR, which, you know, thankfully gets destroyed and saves the day, you know, because there's, of course, the disaster at the end, hence the title where meatballs fall from the sky. So, yeah, and Flint saves the day. What a hero he is. So, yeah, and it's definitely a great film, in my opinion, guys, really great. And at the end of the movie, we also have Flint reuniting with his dad, Tim, and Tim shows appreciation for his son's inventions, and yeah, and then he shares a kiss with Sam. So yeah, so Flint and Sam start a relationship. So yeah, happy ending right there, absolutely, for them. So yeah, and so it was definitely a pretty cool ending, especially how Flint used his spray-on shoes formula on the machine to cause it to explode. So yeah, and ended the storm. Yeah, what a hero he is for doing that. But of course, what was it? 4 years later, guys, we got a sequel to this movie, which, of course, was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. And sadly, this film was not directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, sadly. It was instead directed by Cody Cameron and Chris Pern, sadly. So, yeah. And unfortunately, guys, I think this sequel was very, very inferior compared to the first movie. Now, I don't really hate this sequel, guys, but in my opinion, it was not needed. And I think I have similar problems with this movie compared to other like, not needed animated sequels, like, say, for example, the Lego Movie 2, and also Toy Story 4, and several others, which, in my opinion, are just, you know, okay, really, and not needed. So, yeah. Now, this sequel does have some good things, you know, like, animation, voice acting, and stuff like that, and, other things, really. You know, and the characters are still their usual, you know, likeable selves, really. But when it comes to what I didn't like about this movie, you know, I feel as though this movie definitely flanderized Flint compared to the really amazing character he is in this movie. I feel they really kind of like flanderized Flint because in this movie, he goes from being a very well-meaning and dedicated inventor who is determined to give food to his island, and he becomes an incredibly naive wannabe, you think or not, who will do anything to impress the new villain of this movie, which is Chester V, who is an idol of his. And he doesn't have any concern for his friends. And also, guys, there was actually some pretty annoying scenes where he literally screams for about 10 seconds. And that was just painful to hear. It really was. Goodness me. Now, speaking of Chester V, guys, I personally didn't really like Chester V. And mainly because he's literally a clone of Charles Muntz from Up, which is one of my favourite films by Pixar of all time. because I really, didn't like what we did with Chester V, because he starts off as being like an idol who Flint is a massive fan of, and then of course he later revealed to be a villain. So I feel like, rehashes Charles Muntz from Up. So I didn't really like how they did that. Plus, I also feel he was far too similar to Vector from Despicable Me, which is a bit of a coincidence because they both have V in their name, Chester V and Vector. So yeah, it was pretty weird because he had similar gadgets to Vector, and I'm thinking, this is way too similar to Vector. What's going on here? And he's also as well somewhat similar to Guy Gardner from Turbo as well, which is also a bit of a coincidence because Bill Hader voices Guy Gardner. So yeah, pretty strange coincidence, isn't it, really? Also, one of the things that I also didn't really like about this sequel was I really hate how, compared to the first movie, they really underused Tim in this movie, because he barely had any scenes and screen time, and I hated that. And it also breaks my heart, especially because this was sadly, James Caan's final time in the role before he died, rest in peace. So yeah, it's a shame that, his final performance as Tim was so short. I was hoping they'd give us plenty of him as possible, but sadly not in this movie. And when it comes to other characters, they also as well recasted the officer Earl Devereux, who's no longer voiced by Mr. T, but voiced by Terry Crews. And Terry Crews was a decent replacement, in my opinion. He's a pretty cool guy, Terry Crews, but unfortunately, though, I feel he was an inferior choice compared to Mr. T, actually, in my opinion. And I can also tell that it's not Mr. T when I hear his voice as well, sadly. So yeah, because I'm very used to both of their voices, and I could easily spot that it wasn't Mr. T this time. Because I believe he didn't even want to return for this sequel, and that's understandable, because in my opinion, this sequel wasn't needed to be made. And this sequel also has some plot holes as well, guys. For example, it does not explain how the FLD-SMDFR survived its destruction. It makes no sense because Flint very clearly destroyed it in the first movie, so yeah, doesn't really make much sense how it comes back in this sequel. Yeah, it's very confusing. And another thing that's also confusing is that the villain called Chester V makes food bars, and apparently they were a very popular thing when Flint was a kid. But it was shown in the first movie that the only food for Flint was sardines, not these food bars. So that definitely makes no sense, really. Because in the first movie, of course, Chester didn't even exist yet. So yeah, exactly. It's pretty confusing, isn't it? But for what it's worth for, the sequel is somewhat decent in my opinion, guys. But it's not really a sequel I'm ever going to rewatch again, to be honest. Because in my opinion, it's not really needed. And of course, it does also break my heart more now that Tim was so underused, mainly because James Caan sadly passed away earlier this year, so he may rest in peace. So, I like Tim far better in the first movie, but my personal favourite role of James Caan always will be Sonny Corleone from The Godfather, absolutely. But yeah, Tim would be my favourite voice role of his, but mainly in the first one, because I didn't like how in the sequel he barely had any screen time. That really annoyed me. Yeah, it just felt so bad how his role was greatly diminished compared to the first movie. Yeah, that was very disappointing. And so, yeah. And I also as well feel that, sometimes they also rehash a lot of the first film sometimes as well a little bit, which I didn't really like. They didn't really do much new things, really. And, yeah, it's quite confusing, really. And I didn't like how they also, ripped off Up with the villain as well. That didn't really work for me, to be honest. So, yeah. But nonetheless, this sequel was decent but not needed, so I like to pretend, guys, that Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is only one movie alone, really, and because in my opinion, this film is perfect on its own. In my opinion, it did not need sequels, because in my opinion, it works perfectly as a standalone film. So, yeah, and thankfully, they haven't done a third movie since, and thank God for that, because in my opinion, the second movie was not needed, in my opinion, because it had good reviews from critics, but it was deemed inferior, which I do agree with. In my opinion, it is inferior, but, still a decent film, but in my opinion, not needed. And thankfully, either not announced a third movie, or, green-lighted it, or, mentioned it's in development, so, yeah, thank goodness for that, as far as I know, of course. I mean, who knows what they might do, but if they do a third film, guys, I'm not going to watch it, because the second movie, in my opinion, was inferior, and I'm worried that this sequel might probably be a bit worse, maybe, and make the first film even more pointless, but, who knows, eh? Hopefully they won't do a third film, so yeah. I'll be sure to just only watch the first movie alone, guys, yeah. This is probably all I'll watch, and in the future, guys, I might probably post, you know, like, review for films. So I'll of course post a review for the first film because I love that movie. I think I deserve to talk about it. And also same with a sequel too, maybe, as well. So I can give you guys my full thoughts on the sequel. So, yeah. And so, but nonetheless, for guys, in my opinion, Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs is only one film alone as far as I'm concerned. Just one. So, yeah, that's how I put it. The sequel may not have been terrible, but in my opinion was not needed, to be honest, because the first movie had a pretty amazing ending, which wrapped up the story perfectly, in my opinion. So, because when it comes to what I give a thumbs out of 10, I rate the first movie, you know, a full-blown 10 out of 10. I love this movie. It's my third favourite Sony film behind Spider-Verse and Midgelverse of the Machines. Whereas I give the second film a very mediocre 6 out of 10 because it was disappointing, in my opinion, compared to the first movie. So, yeah, and was not needed. So, yeah, I will post reviews of both the films in the future, guys. But, yeah, if they do a third film, I'm not going to watch it. No way. Because I don't think, you know, it's worth doing a third film because I think the damage was done with the second film. So, yeah, hopefully they won't do one. But, nonetheless, though, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, there's only one Cloudy movie. So, guys, this is me doing my next episode of Movie Didn't Need a Sequel. And today, guys, I was covering why, in my opinion, Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs by Sony didn't need a sequel. So, you know, drill, guys, be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to comments what you guys think of Cloudy with Chance of Meatballs. Do you think it needed a sequel or not? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe for movies from the future. If you'd like to be a member, you can join using a piece of lads or you can leave a description. And I'll see you all later.